Okay, let's get started. This panel is going to be about the evolution of the Myst community. We have representatives who've been in some way running or part of Mysterium or the Myst community since the early days of Mysterium, at least. You all know us from previous panels, so I don't think we need to introduce ourselves, but I think we'll start with how did you get involved in the Myst community initially?
You're looking at me.
Yeah, you're starting.
Hi, I'm Kha'tie. Hi, Kha'tie. I've been on every panel. I am so sorry. I'm also Canadian, that's why I say sorry a lot.
Sorry.
Sorry. So I won't make this too long, but once upon a time, I met and married my husband, Rick, who you all know. He's been running around and cooking hot dogs and stuff. So when Rick and I met, we had a really good friend whose boyfriend worked at IBM, and he had this thing called a computer. So this was about 95. So it was, people had them in their homes, but it was rare, and we certainly didn't have one as newlyweds. And he would bring home a standalone computer on weekends, and one of the things he brought home one weekend was Myst. And so there was a group of about 6 of us hanging out at our friend's house, and they're all like, "Kha'tie, you drive. And I was like, I don't know what the heck I'm doing. Anyway, so I sat down, and as soon as we heard the music, and you guys all know, as soon as we went through the riff, we were hooked. That was it. And so it was me with five people around me going, go there, click that, read that. And I was like, yeah. Anyway, and I remember we got every age done except Selenetic, and and then life moved on, and we had babies who are now 1 million years old, and who have played Myst many times. But we got our first computer ourselves in 2000, and the first thing I bought, Rick likes to tell this story, the first thing he's like, you need a keyboard and you need a monitor, and I'm like, and I need Myst, and he's like, well, but you need a mouse and you need printer paper. I'm like, and I need Myst, and he's like, and the guy, so I picked Myst off the shelf, and he said, do you need Riven? And my eyes went huge, because this is 2 years after Riven came out, and I said, what's Riven? And so I got Ages of Myst instead of, it had a journal. And so we played those 2 games. We just ate them up in about 4 months, and we got stuck a couple times in Riven, because, Riven's hard. Yeah. And we went to Cyan Chat, and a couple years later there was a Mysterium. We went to Philadelphia with our wee kids, and we came out to Spokane in 2003. And while I was there, Ryan was an intern back then, running around helping with Mysterium, just like today, except 20 years younger.
Yeah.
And
well, thanks.
You look the same. Oh. But one of the things I said to Bill Sleece, Eric Anderson, Ryan, and Rand at the time was, if you guys ever need any help with community management, I would love to do that. And Ubisoft called me 3 weeks later and said, we have a position in Montreal you might be interested in. And I've been doing it almost 16 years 16 years this month since I started. So anyway, but you guys really, you made it a dream job. You made it easy. You're mature and articulate and well-read and tech savvy, and not all communities are. So thank you for that. I really appreciate you guys being supportive through the years.
So I'm Ryan Warzecha. I've been in the community, since a long time ago. Science Chat was kind of where I started. I was introduced to Myst by a teacher in middle school, and it was the thing that just changed everything. And I wanted to make games someday. I wanted to work for the company that made Myst someday. And so I started in Cyan Chat, and when they had the very first Mysterium at Cyan, showed up, snuck out of the house kind of thing, not really, but I was in college, and it was the first year of college. Parents, I'm just going on a little trip. It's not from Minnesota all the way out here, right? It was one of those things. It was I just decided to do it. I had to go see Cyan, and did that, and then eventually decided to just move out here and started working with them
He
in
was
2000.
stalking them.
No. Started working with them in 2003, and that was kind of a fun little story there too. That's when I helped with Mysterium back then, and helped with the community, and was on the Uru Live team at the time, and that was so much fun. But then, January 1 rolls around, and Ubisoft cancels, and I'm like, I'm a community guy. I don't have a job anymore. What do we do? So
Myst 5. You did
Yeah,
Myst 5
yeah,
with Bill.
yeah, yep,
It's really
yep.
thanks to Bill and Ryan that Myst 5 got done in the incredibly short time it got done.
It was
so.
an insane schedule, and so did animation, helped with that, and it was cool, and we kept on going. So, I've been around for a while now. Helped with the abduction Kickstarter, got that back, got the band back together, right? So, and we've kept on going. It's been awesome.
All right. Is it my turn?
Yeah, I think so.
I'm Blake Lewin. My story goes back to 1993. And we got a pre-release version of Myst. I was working at Time Warner Interactive. We had put out a CD-ROM game called Hellcab, and we were trying to compete with Spaceship Warlock. And the funny story is, I was working in the office late. I had to drop a report off at the office of our director of marketing, and walked down the halls late, and the lights, threw the lights on, went and put the report on her desk, and she would always get, all the great stuff from all the different publishers around. And on the desk was this box, and I picked it up and I turned it over, and there's a note, "Dear Catherine." And I'm like, "What is this?" And I just take the box. I said, "I'll tell her in the morning." and the funny story is, at that very same time, she was across the street getting her nails done. And as the woman goes, "So, where do you work?" And she goes, "Right up there in the office where the man is stealing the box from my..." So I confessed in the morning, but I couldn't put it down. And I remember the article in Wired came out, Gorillas in the Myst,
Yep.
right? And I immediately got on the phone. I was in business development there at Time Warner Interactive, and got a hold of Rand and said, "Hey, so how is Broderbund anyhow?" And so he said, "They're great, we love them." And so that was my first conversation with Rand. Then in 1999, to zip forward, after I'd played Riven and was just totally obsessed, and it did, the whole reason I'm in the games industry is because of Myst, just like everybody else's story. But in 99, I had this crazy idea. I was working at Turner Broadcasting in Atlanta, and broadband was starting to take off. And there were two companies, so Marty and I have something in common. There were two companies. I thought, what if I called them up and said, what if we did a TV show so we could tell the linear stories, and then we had this online game that people could go back and forth between the two. So I called Chris Brandekamp, and I forget, it was Trevor or somebody at Bungie. Because we were playing Marathon, and we thought, oh, Marathon. And then Oni was going to come out. And then we saw the Steve Jobs 1999 Halo presentation. Mm-hmm. So from that moment on, I started hounding Cyan. And they finally said, "Okay, Blake, come on out. We got top secret project to show you." And it was then labeled Parable, the step up from Mudpie. It's soon to be called Uru, but not later. So they came to Turner, and we wanted to buy it. We wanted to create a whole network around this Myst franchise. And unfortunately, 3 months later, AOL bought Time Warner, and I lost all my funding, and so I had to go back to the drawing board. And real quickly, because it'll tie in, because of that, I created a thing called GameTap, which was a broadband distribution network for all games. And I'll leave it. Thank you very much. And I'll leave it at that, because you guys know how the story ends. But
Well, how many played any of the Myst games or Uru on GameTap at the time?
Yeah.
Yeah, there you
Nice,
go.
that is
so
nice.
we appreciate that.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
I guess I have to go. I'm Elliot Borenstein. That's my real name. When I was a kid, my dad got a copy of Myst, and we just played it as a family in the basement. I remember we had like a MIDI keyboard, so we didn't have to keep checking what the tones were. And then my dad made educational software for a living, so he would get this box every year of the top educational software for the year, and there was a copy of Riven in it. And I said, oh, it says Myst on it. That's like that thing we used to play. And I never finished it. And then in the early 2000s, I was reminded of this and picked up a used copy of Riven and played through it, had a lot of fun, went online and was like, I wonder if there's more of this. And it was shortly before the offline version of Uru was going to be released. And I said, oh, look at this as a thing. And there's a whole community around this. And I joined Uru Obsession, and I got into Prologue, and then was sort of on the websites for a while. And in 2008, Mysterium came to Boston, and I'm from Boston, and I said, oh yeah, I'll just drive up there. We'll figure out what the heck this thing is. And then I've been here ever since.
And thank you for running the current Mysterium.
Yeah, I've been running in some capacity since 2011, so it's been a while. We've sort of figured out you stop running them after you run Spokane Mysterium.
It's kind of like,
That's
oh,
what breaks you.
I'm done.
It hasn't broken Ryan yet, thank goodness.
Well, I don't run them though.
Well, he gets
I'm
paid
just
now.
I'm just like,
You just run.
yeah.
And he gets paid.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, me going to Costco and getting a whole bunch of water, that's a nice little break from the normal job.
So Ryan, I think you went to the first Mysterium.
Yeah.
Can you talk about the early years of
Oh
Mysterium?
man, I mean, first few years of Mysterium, it was just a small. I mean, I think about it now, and like, man, that was a small group, and it was cool. I mean, they were showing us real Myst before its time. They showed the fact that, like, okay, they had two different kind of setups of how to navigate and stuff like that. They were kind of like trying to get some feedback. The building, I mean, for the most part, looks the same. I mean, the carpet's still the same. Anyways, but like the downstairs has now changed, you know, and stuff like that.
I
But
assume the duct tape, the leopard print duct
yeah,
tape
the
is
leopard.
new.
Yeah, that's new. They had, you know, but it was cool back then. You know, just the one thing I think about like a lot is Cyan Chat. Cyan Chat was such a way for a developer to talk to just a regular old guy who loves playing these games, right? And that was kind of before its time, right? Like Cyan Chat, like we had Bill in there, we had Doug, we had Rawa and Cho and you know all. Yeah.
Well, what was amazing, hands up if you were in that first Cyan Chat. I know we took a picture today. So, you know, you'd be sitting in there, and then all of a sudden, maybe at lunchtime on a Tuesday, you'd just see Rawa. Just, you know, they had the blue names that would appear at the top, and everybody would just go crazy. Like, they just, and all of a sudden it went from, you know, a couple lines every minute to, you know, like the chat would just scroll. And often the blues wouldn't say very much. They'd kind of read the room and wait until things died down. And then, you know, if it was Rand, he'd be like, hey, greetings, everybody. But Rawa was always just, hi. It was so cute. Yeah. But every once in a while on a Friday afternoon at 4 o'clock Pacific time, you'd see a blue name, and then you see another blue name, and then, you know, there'd be like 5 or 6 blue names in there, and everybody would just lose their minds.
Yeah,
It was fantastic.
it was awesome.
It
though.
was
a
like
way
seeing
for-
a rock star.
Yeah, I mean, it really was. And then you start to realize, oh, these are just regular people, and you have that relationship, and then all of a sudden you're just making friends, and it just grew from that.
And they'd say, what are we talking about? Like, it was never, hey, guys, we want to talk to you. It was more like, what's going on? What are we talking about? We were talking about what we had for lunch. So all of a sudden, what Rawa had for lunch became a thing. And I think I've been doing community now for 16 plus years, and I've worked for many companies. The one thing I always come back to when I'm in meetings, either setting up a new community or taking on a existing community, is when the team says, well, should we talk to people? Should we answer in the forum? Should we be on Discord? I'm always like, yes. And they're like, I can't reveal anything about the game. I'm like, you don't have to. All they want to know is you as a developer. And I learned that from you guys. The fact that you guys care about Cyan as human beings, what makes them tick. Not just what can you tell me, what can you spoil, but who are you as a person? What are your values? What do you guys do in your spare time? That kind of thing. The fact they like disc golf, and suddenly a lot of Myst fans are disc golf fans too. That's the kind of thing that in between reveals and in between products, you can build that loyalty and foster that trust because you become friends, right? You kind of bridge the gap.
Yeah, to go back to your point where what was it like at first, those very first few years, it was a cool friendship. And I would say that, fast forward, we're right there again. I mean, with the Discord now, like that conversations, those little things, I feel like, man, Cyan is coming back to where it's like, well, okay, they grew really big during Uru, and people didn't know people, right? And didn't know the community as well, I don't feel like.
Well, Myst community helped a little bit, but you're right. The devs didn't get to participate like they used to.
Yeah, and so now they do again. And I think we're getting back to that, like, hey, we just want to be a big family, and that's what this was all about today. Even having you guys up there for just that open house is just like, hey, this is 300 of the coolest friends I got, and I'm just having a barbecue, and let's have fun, right? and get to know each other. So.
And I will tell you guys, sorry, I don't want to take up all the time, but I will tell you guys who are on Discord, and if you're not, you should be on the Cyan Chat Discord. There are some developers who are in blue, and you can tell who they are, and there are some who are not. And they're reading everything. And so you guys might be having a side convo about some random, aspect of fandom or the game. They're reading, and they take that stuff to heart. So, yeah, I just wanted to tell you guys, like, just pepper in things that you'd like to see or things you really love, because right now the team is being very buoyed by, the fact that 20 years in and look at the crowds, like they love, it's really been a shot in the arm for the team. So keep doing what you're doing, guys. Keep participating.
I feel bad that you're being left out because you've only been to Mysterium once, but question that someone submitted to us was, what's your favorite or what's a crazy Mysterium story that you remember?
I think... you want to go? Or okay. So... Ren mentioned this at a dinner the other night, and it was kind of funny because I'll take it from the other side. I wasn't at Cyan yet at that time, but Carlsbad was an interesting Mysterium. Number 2. Rawa came down. That was awesome. We were all excited. We went in the hotel, and we missed everything they had planned for us. Like, Cyan had this big puzzle planned for us, and we missed all of it. Like, literally, they had an ad in the newspaper that everybody got at the hotel, and no one read the newspaper. And they had a billboard on the way to Carlsbad Caverns that had like a thing, and no one saw it. And then Jeff Zandy, who shows up in Uru, comes to the con, and he's talking to us, and he has this big journey symbol on his shirt, and we are all there, and we're talking to him, and he's a nice guy, and but none of us take pictures, none of us realize that this is a part of the game, right? And so they were doing AR stuff well before we were into that, and it finally, like Rand had said, then we had to just pepper it, and then all of a sudden, like, we had to say that there's this location, and then people then started taking, there used to be a billboard there, and then they called the billboard guy and all that stuff, but yeah, like.
But ever since then, every Mysterium people like he said today, the number on the fire hydrant is just a number, like it's not a puzzle.
Yeah, exactly. But that's man.
Why.
Yeah, exactly. Because we missed it all. But that was the kind of the crazy stories, like just hearing after the fact, like just talking to Rand and being like, we had this plan, and you guys like didn't see any of it. So it's like, okay.
Yeah, I just remember, so I have an aha moment and then I have a ha-ha moment. So my aha moment was the first Mysterium we chose to go to, like we knew about Spokane, but we couldn't afford that. And then Carlsbad was too far away. And then in 2002, they said Philadelphia. Well, that's 9 hours. Let's throw the little kids in the car and go. And so we did, and we brought 2 other fans with us. And I remember when we got there, we didn't know what to expect, and all the lore stuff and the costume contest and the stories were great. But then we Cyan had this big theater that they had rented for us to go. We all went and sat down, and nobody knew what was going to happen. We were just like, are they going to show us a video? Are they going to? Well, all of a sudden, there was Rand and Rawa on Skype video chat talking to us, and then, you know, the screen panned over, and there they are walking in Dunny, and it was just like weeping openly, and they're in Dunny, like. Because we didn't know anything about Uru yet. We had heard the name Mud Pie, but no one knew what that was. Or DIRT, we knew about dirt, but no one knew what it was. And Rand's like, well, you guys want to see what we've been doing? And we're like, yeah. And so that moment, like weeping openly. And then what?
Who here camped in our backyard?
Who here camped in our backyard after Toronto?
Yeah, that was a real aha moment, because after Mysterium Toronto, Kha'tie invited people back home. That's the community, right? She invited everyone back home.
We had 24 people who came over.
Camped out in our backyard, had to buy bought a wireless router, so all these kids are on their laptops in our backyard, in our living room, everywhere.
That was awesome. But yeah, so Mysterium's been a huge part of our life, and then 14 years went by and we weren't at one, so we're really happy to be here this year. But the ha-ha moment was, if you guys know Jurl, Kate, so Jurl's famous. She was a moderator at mystcommunity.com, famous for don't talk to me till I've had my coffee, everything. And so the first night we were at here in 2003 in Spokane, we were at what's now the La Quinta Hotel, I think, and she was about 4 doors down, and Alamnat and I ran around and got everybody's coffee machines and put them all in a row outside her door in the hallway. And so when it was time to all come out of our rooms to go, the first thing, she opened the door and there's just coffee machines everywhere. Anyway, I liked that. But moments like that, like of not sleeping all night for 3 nights, just talking to people about Myst, really.
So I'm going to jump in here because this is my first Mysterium, and a lot of you guys, right? Yay. First Mysterium, woohoo! But I still feel part of the community, because Uru was where I started to come into the community, right, and realize that there was a huge community. I mean, you guys this is a big 300 people, but we're talking 40,000 people were in the original Ubisoft beta. And the interesting thing was, so I'll bring you back to now about 2005, 2006. So GameTap is launched. We're looking to start doing episodic content. And again, just so everybody knows, we were the Netflix of games before Netflix was even streaming video. So, so we wanted episodic content, and this was a perfect time to finally get back and get Uru Live happening again, right? So I was very excited about this. There was a professor.
2005 for Cyan was not a good spot.
No, it was not.
So just so everybody knows, there was a layoff in 2005.
Right.
But then Blake came.
And in fact, Bryce, the CTO of the company, gives me a call and says, yo, if you're really interested in Cyan, you might want to give him a call right now. Because something's going to happen, and you might be able to help before that thing happens. And so we did. So Turner, after doing GameTap, I had some cred, and so I said, hey, there's this company where we can kind of get this content back. We can do it as episodic content within GameTap, and it's great. So this is where the community comes in. I had to prove that, right? So they're like, online worlds weren't really a big thing then. World of Warcraft really hadn't fully become all that it was going to become. There was this belief that 500,000 was the biggest of virtual worlds could become, and that they were the same people, and they were going from Ultima Online to EverQuest to World of Warcraft. Now, World of Warcraft blew that out of the water, but at the time we had to prove it. So there was an IT guy there called Eric Larget, and he was running a shard of Until Uru. Now, how many people did Until Uru? Yes. So you'll all remember this then, right? So I talked to Eric and I said, can we set up a shard inside Turner, and can we collect everybody? And at the same time, and this still blows my mind, there was a professor, associate professor at Georgia Tech, Celia Pierce, whose thesis was on the Uru community. And basically, as a diaspora, as whether you guys were Jews or Chinese or Italian or Polish, I mean, you had to leave your world, you had to leave your land, and you set up these enclaves in there and in Second Life and in these other places. And of course, you created your own shards and ran Until Uru, right? So it was an amazing anthropological study, and she's got her thesis is now a book called Communities at Play or of Play.
There's somebody here who who's here, put your hand up, where are you, that had the course. Oh, you did in college? Somebody else. Okay, anyway, sorry, we've been talking about Celia Pierce.
Yeah, no, so it was, so the fact that I was talking to her about her thesis, and I actually wanted to bring everybody back to the homeland. So we created the Shard at Turner. We shut down, I mean, everybody was really gracious. We said, look, we're going to shut down all the other shards. We want everybody back in one place. And everybody was amazing. We got everybody back in, and Turner looked at it and went, wow, that's pretty cool. And so that's how I realized, what a strong community it was, and the beginnings of my involvement in the community there, all virtual, but it was great.
Yeah.
So there are lots of people who have played Myst out there who don't know anything about the community. And there's always, so in running Mysterium for all these years, it's, you mention, oh yeah, we won a convention about Myst. I remember Myst. How do I go to this thing? Where is this? So as community managers, how do you bring those people in? How do you reach those people? And how do we bring them back to Cyan Games and to Mysterium and to...
Yeah, so anytime I want to get the word out, I always ask, so I always start with a small group. Ryan and I have both done this quite a bit, but we have a small group right now, actually, and I think most of the community knows this. There's a small group of people that we kind of rely on to help get the word out to the larger groups, but then we rely on you guys, the avids, who are either on Twitter or on Facebook. It used to be in the forums, now on Discord, even in the Slack channel. I know there's a few of you guys who are in that. But we rely on you guys. When we put the word out and you hear about stuff, we want that, like, if everybody tells 2 people, we're good, because they'll tell 2 people, and so on and so on. That's really what I count on is, and I guess the more important the message is, for stuff like Mysterium, I mean, it is working, because those first Mysteria, as I call them, were quite small. I mean, we had a big one in 2003, and you've had big ones in 14 and stuff. This is one of the largest ever, and we're between titles, and we're 20 years on. So the fact that we're still gathering around this game from 1993 is quite incredible. So it's working. But as a community manager, I just want to say we rely so heavily on the community to get that word out. Lots of people call it guerrilla marketing and stuff, but really it's just word of mouth. If you like something, you're going to tell your friends. And as we saw during the 25th Myst anniversary, I mean, look at the thousands and thousands of people that came out, everybody from you guys to Neil Patrick Harris. So, everybody that's played it is out there. We just have to find them. And so you guys were phenomenal during that Kickstarter, and even during the Firmament Kickstarter, getting the word out. It's really what we rely on you guys for.
I think it's really interesting to think about the Myst television series and how that will affect this kind of event. You know what I mean? Because once that happens, which it will happen. Yeah.
Next year on Netflix.
Yeah, exactly. I heard Rand say that this morning, right? Yeah. So
it's a dry heat.
Yeah.
This is all we really got from the legendary deal. My T-shirt and the.
Some T-shirts and hats, I think.
Right?
Yeah.
And all I got was this lousy T-shirt.
But I think it could really, really affect these cons, because all of a sudden it'd be like, oh, I remember that game, and oh, let's go find out what that company's still doing, and oh, there's a community, and oh, they're doing a convention near me now. I think
Yeah.
it's gonna
Oh,
be big.
there's a mailing list. Oh, there's Cyan Chat.
Yeah,
Oh,
I
there's
know.
MC.com. There's Uru
Yeah.
Obsession.
Yeah.
Like, you know, when you guys go to search for whatever, and all of a sudden you'd stumble on one or all of these things, or you'd find Mysterium.net, or you'd find Rand's Twitter handle. However you got here, you kind of discovered it online from someone else in the community, and we really rely on you guys for that stuff.
I think we can open it up to questions, but do any of you have anything you want to say about community management or community in general first?
Well, okay. So I really want to say, I want you guys all to have yet another chance to thank you and the committee, because without you guys, we really wouldn't have this space to come together as a
Yeah.
community in person and look each other in the eyes, all us nerds looking at each other and, you know, and getting to hug each other and share in this love. So thank you, Elliot, and the committee again. I know it's not over, but
We do what we
And-
can.
and thank you. I know you're, you know, the only one here from
Talking to
Cyan,
him?
but you.
No.
No, you.
What? Really?
Okay,
No.
you too, but thank you to Cyan. They open their doors so often, and even if you kind of drop in the middle of the year, they'll let you in and say hi. And I mean, even how they've laid out their office with that in mind, with visitors in mind and stuff. So huge thanks to Cyan too, and thanks for all your
Of
hard
course.
work
That's all
through the
Rand,
years.
but yeah.
I have a quick funny story about Cyan opening their doors at random to fans. In 2013, I was in Seattle for PAX Prime for work, and I came early and said, I'm going to drive to Spokane and go visit Cyan. And I hadn't been since '09. And I go in, you know, Rand, they were expecting us. And I go in and I meet Tony, who says, well, Rand just got back from a camping trip and he has the flu. So he's not going to be, and as he's saying this, Rand is walking in the door behind him, and his wife is walking in behind him with this look of like, I can't believe we're here. And he says, yeah, she said I couldn't come, and I said, no, there's people I have to see. And she said, no, you can see them a different day. They're only here for one day. And then he like takes us, and we look around, and then he sort of, without us thinking about it, takes us into the elevator, and the doors close. He says, you really shouldn't breathe while you're in here with me.
It's a magical place, eh, guys?
Yeah.
Okay, so
Yeah,
we
do have
can
any
do questions.
Who's the runner? That was Odo, right? Do you have the mic? Great.
No
Any
questions.
questions?
They are the community. They don't need to ask
Yeah,
community
yeah.
questions. Who's your favorite community member?
Oh.
You're all special.
Sorry, I'm sort of clumsy. That's why I like to play computer games. Anyway.
Hi, David Mouse.
Hello, hi, good to see you. Well, some of you may. Hi, good to see you. Enough about me. Questions for a couple of people. For Kha'tie, have you done community management for any other communities since then? Because Ubisoft divorced us rather cruelly. And for Blake, what went wrong with the game tab Uru Live? It didn't only lasted for a school year itself.
Mm-hmm.
So I can answer that. Unfortunately, Myst 5 was everything Rand had been planning to put into Uru as episodic content, right? Almost everything, right? And we only had a budget so big, and it was a nice sized budget, but creating that amount of content in a short period of time was very, very difficult. So it just it didn't end up being practical. And then the other thing is GameTap itself in 2008, the market collapsed. Turner sold everything off that wasn't nailed down to cable, right? So we sold the Braves, we sold the Hawks, we sold GameTap, everything. So it was just really a part of that whole bad perfect storm.
Why couldn't they still put the ages from Myst 5 into the new Uru Live?
It was that's a really good question, but Ubisoft had that game.
Yeah.
as they had 3 and 4 as well. So
Right.
it
Do they still have Myst 5?
no.
It's all
because
been returned to
I
Cyan.
went back and I got all the games, and that's why we
Yeah.
did Myst 25th, because Cyan now owns everything.
Okay, Katie,
Yeah. So.
community management. Yeah.
Yeah, so, okay, so when Uru was canceled, I had the wonderful honorable task of telling all of you. And it's really hard to type and cry at the same time. So for those of you who don't know, I worked at Ubisoft, not at Cyan. I worked with Cyan. I talked to Ryan every day. I talked to Bill, but I worked with people in Ubisoft whose names you may or may not know, like Joe Ibarra and Seb Puel and Christophe Pelletier, all 3 of whom, the day they told these guys that Ryan Miller talked about yesterday, they were just zombies walking around like, what just happened? So the money guys at the top who decided this had to tell Joe, Seb, and Christophe, who were all in love with Cyan, in love with Uru. We loved what we were doing every day. And when after they told Cyan, they told us. And Joe Ibarra told us. He was director of UB.com at the time. Tears pouring down his face. We were all absolutely heartbroken. And after that, we kind of picked up the pieces, figured out a way to convey it to you guys that this was happening. And one of the decisions that was made at the time to recoup some costs, not just for Ubisoft, but for the guys at Cyan so they could keep going, was to do Myst 5. And right, and to do Path of the Shell and that stuff. Because, yeah, we now have, instead of this kind of online continuing thing, we have to we have all this content. Let's figure out the best way where we can A, get it to you guys, and B, maybe keep the lights on. Yeah. So that's how that happened. After Myst 5 was out, I kind of said, well, what do I do now? It's out and everybody's happy, or relatively happy. And so I had been community at Myst Worlds for a couple of years. Ubisoft said, well, we don't really need you full-time on Myst stuff anymore. How would you like to do Far Cry? And I was like, right?
It's first-person, non-linear. It's a list of shooters.
So so I got in the boat, and I went to the island. I'm like, oh, an island. I know what the... Pow. I die instantly. I'm dead. I'm bleeding on the sand. I'm like, I don't think this is for me, guys. Meanwhile, Joe Ibarra had moved on, so I became the community manager for a game called Stargate Worlds, so if you were one of the 70,000 people who became part of that community, and then that game was canceled during beta, and now I'm thinking, oh, maybe it's me. And then and then the next thing I did was Jumpgate Evolution, which also was canceled during alpha. I'm literally now thinking it is me. So I'm saying in interviews, you don't want to hire me. So I went to a few places. I went to Cartoon Network, where Blake and I finally met, which was awesome and serendipitous. And I worked... Actually, no, it wasn't canceled. I worked on Fusion Fall, which was a kids game.
Which was canceled, but it had gone live.
It went online. I just had to leave before that happened. So thank goodness that got made. But I've worked on a Game of Thrones game. I've worked on a Star Trek game. So I currently work actually for 7 different companies doing community management, and I love every single one of them, but you guys were my first and will always be my favorite. And so I'm so happy I still work with Cyan. Probably half my time is spent on Cyan stuff, Zed, and future
I'm sure
stuff.
you guys know it's no surprise why we would hire her back immediately as she became available. She is Myst Community inside Cyan for us, so we appreciate
I love
Katie.
You.
Right back there.
Well, I can't tell. I was partially, that leads into, I was wondering, doing this community continued on even when there was nothing coming out, whereas, and having kids who joined like game communities online and then, yeah. it's gone and the kids are like heartbroken and stuff. It's like, how, as a community manager, how is that to cope with? That they say, oh, you know, it's been whatever, a good run, we're done, you know?
Yeah. Okay, so one of the things I always remember is, I mean, you guys all know what trolls are and toxic communities and stuff. And one of the things I always tell the teams I work with is, if somebody's taking the time to go online and troll, or go online and excuse my language, bitch about stuff, or, you know, or complain, or kibitz, it's because they care. So how they do it might not be the best, but the reason they're doing it is sound. And so I always like to say I try to harness people's powers for good instead of evil. And so I asked, so 3 of the best Myst Worlds moderators we ever had were from a huge thread flame war during Uru beta.
Yeah.
And it was Maztec, and it was Graham and John's. Anyway, I can't remember his name. But those 3, they fought and they fought and they fought and they kibitzed and they were just at each other's throats. And I finally called them all into a Skype call, and I said, "You guys are all so well spoken and articulate and passionate. Can you all be mods?" And they instantly became friends, and they were the best mods we ever had. Like, it was just fantastic.
Yeah.
So again, the reason behind it is, you're passionate, you care about it. So if you're taking the time to come online and type an angry rant, and so those people that are in those communities, when they have their hearts broken like that, like, I just want to hug them and say, it's going to be okay. You're going to, you know, stay together, find something else you're passionate about, just keep at it. Like, come to Myst, we'll all love you, you know, because the reason you're there is because you're passionate about it, you care about it. So we want you to be passionate and care about you know, what we do.
But how often do they actually stick together and continue?
Yeah, so sometimes, like I've been with communities where, you know, they'll give up and move on, but there's always a core group that stays. Like, it's weird because Rick will say I collect people wherever I go. He can tell you, like, I've been friends with a lot of people in this room for 20 years because of starting, you know, with Myst in 2000. But from every community I've ever worked with, I kind of take a pocket full of people and I keep them with me. And so a lot of them have since played Myst and joined this community. Yeah, you can always find those people. Like, I guess it's like any relationship, you know, if it isn't meant to be, then you shouldn't fight to keep it. I guess that's the best way to say it. But yeah. I hope that answered your question.
So since we seem to be a little low on questions, I thought I would offer a bit of a rebuttal to the Mysterium 2001 story about us not paying attention.
Okay.
And that is that even though we missed the hints to things that had not ever been established as Myst canon before,
Yes.
we did, I think, about 5 to 10 of us, which may have been about half to 2/3 of the attendance at Mysterium, did get a fine for exploring parts of Carlsbad Caverns that were not technically meant to be explored. So,
Yes.
we may have missed the official stuff, but we were still being Myst fans.
Do you know, the first time I ever went to Cyan, you were the first person I saw, like, ever, and I thought you worked there. I'm like, oh, she must work here. Rick and I still talk about that. You were the first person I ever saw at Cyan, and you were just so at home there.
And then at one point she did.
Yeah.
So. Yeah.
There was a question over here.
Oh, with the cool dunny dress.
Oh, yes.
How awesome is that dress?
Wow, thanks everyone. I'm so glad I figured out how to throw together an order for this dress at the last minute. So I'm worried that this question is going to come off as like digging up dirt, and so I don't think I'm asking for anyone to tell like especially like scandalous stories, but I am curious, given how strong this community is, given how long it's been around, Are there factions or fractions within the community? Do you see like, oh, these people are really into the lore but don't like the logic puzzles, or these people just are in it for the logic puzzles and there's like tensions between those? I'm just curious.
I think like with any community, you're going to have your little groups and your people that hang out and you know, I mean, Uru was all about fractioning.
Yeah.
I mean, if you think about it, you had the Great Tree pub group, and then you had all these other DRC people, and yeah, it's
Guild of Greeters.
Yeah, Guild of Greeters. In the end, you tend to get along anyways. Like in events like this, right? Like how can you not get along with the community, right? Like, yeah, maybe we weren't best friends all the time, right? But like, you know, a few forum posts and stuff like that, you get past it over time. So
yeah, and in mystcommunity.com you'd see that a lot. Like we ended up having so many sub forums for almost every interest they had, and we have that now thanks to Ellery and Blade. In Discord. You know, we have a private chat with them where we're always talking about, do we need this? Do we not? Should we merge these? Should we split these? Guild of Linguists is a perfect example of, I don't want to go in there. I can't. Like, Calamus is always giving me heck for not. He says stuff to me all the time. He could be saying like, "Bring home eggs and milk." I don't know what he's saying to me. Exactly. I just always nod and smile and say thank you. Like, but that's a definite little group, and but like he said, we're all one community, and so if you have little sub interests from that, I think that's just really cool, and people can kind of dip their toes into whatever they want.
Well, I don't know if this is talking out of school, but I remember having long talks with Rand about Uru and the programming of Uru and the ability to see inside of Uru to see the community with somebody showing up and talking to a group of people, and then let that spread and watch the social interaction and watch tensions occur. It's like, you know, the life of Brian. No, they want us to take off a sandal. No, they want us to make sandals. They're you know.
We're all individuals.
But the idea is that within that community, there is always competing ideas or disagreements, and that can actually be a good thing to create energy and content in and of itself in this virtual world where you're playing yourself, but you're also living in another environment that you're immersed in this story. So,
does everyone? Is Brian Fioca here? Brian.
Jean's here, right?
Yeah. Oh, hi, Jean. Okay, so one of I know.
Yeah.
You have to.
Oh,
it's been enough time. Okay. Okay. So when Uru was in beta, one of the things that both thrilled and freaked me out as a community manager is Ryan and Eric and Rand said, so here's what we're going to do. And I was like, oh my gosh. They decided they were going to do these random, I mean, they were scripted and they were pre-planned and they were really cool, but they were going to just plop somebody into the game, an NPC played by one of these guys, and they were going to go into the cavern and talk to people and trigger things that were going to happen in the game. So this was absolutely amazing. This was groundbreaking. This, you know, you didn't see this in WoW or in UO. Like, you know, stuff would die and then it would just come back and you'd do it again. This was live events that were going to change the world, and that would be persistent. Well, this was unheard of and incredible, and I was terrified.
Yeah.
You have to explain what happened with Brian.
Which one? With Brian? Like
the Sharper stuff. How many remember all that stuff happening? And how many remember how freaking cool it was? Like, it just freaked us, right? Yeah. Like, did it not freak you right out?
So, I mean,
even knowing it was going to happen, I was still like,
I don't know that I want to go into too many details, because who knows? Maybe Uru will come back someday, right?
Fine.
So, but I mean, Netflix next year. Yeah. No, but I mean, it was a very interesting time at Cyan, and there were times even as for community being like, guy who plays Sharper, you can't do this. You can't split up this community like you're doing right now. This is too much. And I'd be like, you can't. And But it worked out. It was interesting. It definitely added that dynamic to it, where it was like, yeah, you had this tension of this group that was starting to come into their own, and they got their own shirts.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh,
Yeah.
no one else in this game but this like 7 get these shirts.
I remember showing up. They gave me an avatar, my Blake avatar, and I just showed up as Blake. And I forget what happened. Wiley fell down a hole, or she was getting eaten by the. Anyhow, I forget what happened. It was something terrible. And like literally, I walked in, and these people came running up to me like, "Do you know what's happening? Like I can do something, but like I'm like, no, I didn't, and I didn't know because they didn't share.
Yeah.
And so I walk over, and with the stories unfolding, and everyone's standing around talking about it, very concerned, and I'm like, wow.
Yeah.
This is very cool.
It's so compelling.
Yeah. It was like a radio drama within a game, because there's, especially with the wheelie stuff, it was like we didn't have a lot there to work with, right? Like
Everybody pitched in the community to create their own story.
Right, but you also make sure, like, if you're awake and the kids are fed, you got to be in there, because you never know when it's going to happen again.
yeah.
I think Zardoz didn't sleep for a week.
Oh man, yeah. I mean, I think back to those events, and that what you were saying with Rand. It was always like, okay, we'll get Edinburgh or somebody in Laxman, right? So he'll come in, he'll do his thing, and then let's see where it goes from there. You know what I mean? Like,
I mean, it's funny because reality TV programming is, of course, scripted, and wrestling, I'm sorry, is also scripted.
Wait, what?
But it was this mix of reality, because you're in there, you're feeling real things, you're thinking your thoughts, but you're being fed a story that is this borderline. It's a story, right? Mm-hmm. So it's a really interesting aspect of play, and we talk about games and talk about this idea of play, but we forget the deeper aspects of play that we did as kids, which is make up stories and do pretend. And it just, Uru was way ahead of its time, and I hope someday it gets its real day, because it did something that was different, and again, because it was ahead of its time, it was very hard to communicate that to the world. But it was an amazing thing, and the community was the most important thing in that, because without you guys, it's just an empty cavern.
Going back to Brian, I think when we think about that design and that what we were planning to do there, it's a little improv theater too, right?
Yeah.
So all of a sudden there's this guy who's playing along with us, right? And he's
Who
like,
wasn't
I
supposed to
want to
be
start
there.
this group.
Wrong
right?
place, right time.
Right. Yeah, I want to start this group, and I was like, oh, you want to be a part of this? Let's figure this out, right? And a little bit of improv, communities doing choices, making choices that we have to okay, if they're really concerned about wheelie, let's make that a thing.
Yeah.
Can I chime in a second?
Yes, please.
Just wanted to mention that as soon as that stuff started unfolding and they started talking to Brian, he didn't sleep much either. Last night, all the time waiting for Sharper to come in and talk to him.
Yeah, and that's the thing, is there were no back channels, right? There were no like, we're gonna let you guys in on this and kind of get you Brian didn't know when Sharper would roll in, so yeah.
You guys didn't even share that in 2 or 3 of you only. Like, I didn't know, and sometimes
I didn't know.
Right? Yeah. And sometimes I'd say, okay, right, and you'd be like, they didn't tell me today.
Yeah.
Like just they'd kind of pick and choose. They pick and choose who was. But what I loved is
that's the question, right?
But I also think that when I'm in Dunny and when I'm in Uru and any of you guys are in there, you're a hero. Like, it's not just like kind of supporting actor. Everybody is really important and really integral. Like you're just really, I don't know. I love it.
Yeah.
I absolutely.
I mean, everybody can have a role. I mean, that's the thing. It's
and
like
they do have a role.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Some of the
first
stuff
thing
is,
I check is who had been there right before me, right? Who went straight in there and was like, who's just been here?
And some of that stuff, it was always interesting, because maybe you'd have Richard come in there, Rawa, right? And he would talk to one explorer, and then nothing had happened with it. Like it just died because that person decided not to say it to anybody else. It was a secret between him. And then like, so then you'd have to be like, okay, well, how do we spread this out a different way?
Right.
You know what I mean? So,
Yeah, it was
I don't know. It was
It
an
was
interesting
literally
time.
done in real time.
It was done in real time.
Who takes the fall for the, what was it, community liaisons that were supposed to represent to the DRC from the community?
I don't know what that is.
I mean, there's the res engines, but those
No,
were.
there were people that were supposed to represent the explorers.
Oh,
and
each group?
Yeah,
I don't know.
I remember that.
Yeah, but it's like everyone expected them to like talk to the DRC and make things happen.
And then people were ticked off that things weren't getting open in the cavern and like, aren't you talking to the DRC? What the heck's wrong with you guys?
But people were being social, right? Like they get together and be like, let's kick cones, or you know what I mean, or let's have a dance party.
Yeah, but these representatives like were given this whole build-up thing.
Yeah.
They were going to interact with the DRC, and I'm like, whose idea was that? 'Cause that wasn't going to.
I wasn't there. I'm sorry.
I don't mean to powers me, but you know, we'll go there. I'll take it. Okay, I'll take the fall. That's fine. It's a game that's not around anymore, so what am I gonna do? So, like,
We probably have, one more question and then we're done.
Oh, hi. Blake, you said before that Ur was ahead of its time. How do we get a gaming environment or industry where it's time? And if it's not Uru, something like Uru, of that vein, that sort of real-time, social, virtual world where everybody kind of has a part in it.
can I start? I think it's really interesting to look at Fortnite right now with their live events, right? I look at those things and I'm like, oh, okay, they're doing it with their Fortnite players, right? They're saying, okay, we're going to have this live event. All these people come to this thing. They're watching it. And it's like, we did that. We did that. I mean, and so now I think we're getting there. Now I'll let you kind of go.
No, it's a great question. And I think if you look at VR, it's not a mistake that Zuckerberg bought a VR company. I'll leave it at that, right? I mean, that was not, oh God, I have a bunch of $1 billion. I'll just get them. It's intrinsic in where VR is going that it will be social. I mean, that's kind of the point, right? And everybody looks at it as like, oh, it's so isolated, and you got this mask on your head, and that isn't where it'll end up. So I think if you watch where VR is going and the types of social interactions there, that you'll see that what we did in Uru, I think will eventually evolve in VR.
VR chat?
Yeah, I mean, more or less, but again, it'll evolve. I think the great thing.
Who's in VR chat? You?
I said VR chat.
Yeah.
Because that's on a very basic level you can get together and just socialize.
Are you in there?
I don't have a VR headset,
Oh, okay.
so I've been in, but it's just not.
Yeah, it's really early. But the ultimate thing that Uru was so different, and again, I go back to, you have a game, and game is two things. It's play and then it's sport, right? I mean, there's scoring, and games as an industry has skewed so far to the points, the shooting, the competitive nature, right? I mean, but there's that huge aspect that we've all done of play. And I think Myst itself was just another earlier version of play, like being a story. And I think as that evolves, I hope eventually, and I hope it's us, but I do hope eventually that form of entertainment, which I've always called immersive or interactive, because it's kind of beyond just being a game.
And I think that's all.
That's it.
I just had a quick comment, but on the subject of having like one-off events and stuff like that, that really does create a game and kind of like a community where it's like you have to be online, you have to be available, you cannot do other things, and in some sense it it's a little exclusive for people who don't necessarily have all the time in the world or do have other interests.
Or have fear of missing out.
Yeah. And I mean, with some of that, had Uru gone further along, there would have been recorded things. There would be things that you would have come across, that things you would have been able to see recaps of stories and things like that. There was
there was a plan. I remember seeing an early plan where it was going to be, if it was 8 p.m. Eastern one day, it would be at 8 p.m. European time the next. They were going to space it out. It was going to happen more than once. There was going to be and it was going to scale as well. They had this great plan for scaling.
And there'd still be the puzzles and all that stuff. I mean, this was just one aspect of the game.
It was just to move story along, and eventually that would just get more sophisticated, more interesting. But also they wanted to reward the early community. Like the reason the DRC would kind of show up, or any other NPC would show up for these early adopters was as a reward.
Speaking of, who saw a Barrow in Uru? Okay, yeah.
Freaked me out.
Yeah, that was we won't go there.
You could always kind of hear them. Yeah, seeing them is a whole different thing. Okay, who screamed when they saw the little girl in ribbon?
So I think that's it. So
what a weird note.